Forget what you've heard about heart rate training. Dr. Fox's scale is wrong, and I'm going to explain why. If you want to get faster on your bike, you're going to want to tune in for this. Let's get into it.
All right, welcome back to Bespoke Endurance. Today is episode 6 of Recreational Rider to Racer podcast series, where Josh and I are being both recreational riders, transforming into racers, being coached by an elite cyclist. We have careers, spouses, and young kiddos, and life is busy, but we love cycling. Maybe you're like us where you're not training to become a pro. Maybe you don't have the time like we don't have the time, but simply trying to level up in the midst of balancing a busy life. Then this podcast is for you. Please, if you're interested in this content, help this channel grow. Please like and subscribe and follow along on our journey. Before we get into everything we're going to talk about today, we want to give a huge shout out to Road ID for not only supporting our podcast, but also
love it
for letting us film right here at their headquarters. If you're a cyclist, runner, or someone who wants peace of mind while out on the road, Road ID has you covered. Their medical IDs provide crucial info in case of an emergency, and they look great too. Do yourself a favor, check out roadid.com and grab one today. Big thanks to the team at Road ID for their support. We also want to mention that Kentucky Open Road Racing Series is partnering with us to bring you an exclusive deal.
Let's go.
If you're looking to race in Kentucky or in the Open Road Racing Series, use the code BESPOKE15 at checkout for 15% off your registration. Whether you're a seasoned racer or just getting started, Coors has something for every level cyclist. This year, Coors is teaming up with Cannondale, and one lucky racer will be drawn to win a Cannondale Super 6 Evo 4. Enter all 4 races to quadruple your chances and come have a blast with us while we rip through the Kentucky countryside. Don't miss out. Sign up today and save. Head over to KentuckyORRS.com and use the code BESPOKE15 at checkout. That's BESPOKE15. What a deal.
Dude, that Super 6, look, that's an amazing offer.
It looks like it looks nice.
Yeah, that's dope.
I would take a free bike.
Yeah. Okay, so before we get into our very juicy main discussion, let's talk about our last week of training. So, kicking it over to you. Okay. How has this past week been for you?
This week's been good. I not only got to get outside, we rode again together.
Let's go.
Little cafe ride. I got to get out 2 days in a row. So that's been a lot of fun. Training's been good this week. I feel myself getting stronger. I've been adapting more and more to getting up in the mornings. So I still, when I wake up, have 3 minutes where I contemplate every life decision that's brought me to that point of 5:15 a.m. But other than that, it's been going really good.
That's good.
I've had a good week training. You?
Yeah, I've enjoyed. I definitely have felt from when we first started in early January till now, I have certainly felt my power increase, and I've seen my zones shift in a good way. And I think that's been really encouraging for me to see that, to where just over the past month and a half, just to see that power increase and just that fitness. So I'm excited about that. But one thing that was interesting was our coach, Derek, he mentioned that for me, he's changing up a little bit of my training plan. So he has me doing a soft peak in March.
Okay.
Which
what does that mean?
It's a good question. Basically, initially he was going to have me my A race is in June.
Yeah.
That's where
it's a long
way to train from January till June. And he even mentioned that's a long runway to be able to do a full build up to where you're
hold fitness for
that entire
months.
thing. So he said what he wants to do is that he wants to do a soft peak in March, because we've got a race coming up in Georgia, and he wants to kind of reverse periodization it. Basically, what he wants to do is make me do a lot more intensity from now leading up till March, where I'm doing maybe a lot more HIIT intervals, a lot more VO2, some of those zone 5 workouts, to where I'm getting a lot higher intensity quicker, and I will essentially peak, quote unquote, come March. But then after March, what he has me doing, even though that's not my A race, he thinks it'll be better because then once the weather gets warmer, I'll be able to do more volume outside. And so therefore, leading up from basically April through June, he's going to have me reverse it to where I'm doing a lot more zone 2 work and also a lot more just volume. And I think that'll be interesting because I'm, looking at this to where I feel really good right now, but it'll be interesting going back after March to see, I'm starting to do a lot more volume and maybe a lot less intensity. And going into that race in June, I'll be curious to see how that plays out, where essentially I'll still be in really good fitness form. I'll essentially peak again come June, but it'll be different where your volume might be, like you right now, be more volume based versus high intensity.
Yeah.
And I think he's kind of flipping us right now in that
It's interesting. I wonder if he'll do a mini peak for me, only because my A race isn't until June.
Yeah.
But I think once it gets warm, you get up early and get outside, but you're not as tied to being home at 7.
Yeah.
So you could potentially stay out till 8.
Correct.
And get 3 hours a weekday in, whereas I could still only max out like 90 minutes.
Yeah.
So, bummer.
Yeah.
That sounds like a lot of fun.
Yeah.
Here's what's funny. Once summer hits and I have way more time to do volume, we'll be done with our races.
Just quit cycling at that point.
Yeah.
What's the point?
What's the point?
Well, the other thing that was interesting from our training, and this actually leads right into our main discussion, but
Here we go. This is it.
We both did a zone 2 ride.
Yes.
And it was a great ride. Cafe ride, we rode for 2 hours, 15 minutes, and it was just a flat ride. We have a Loveland bike trail, very flat. We rode what I would consider my zone 2 the whole time, and you rode in zone 2 the whole time. However,
I could not hold your wheel.
The thing was,
our zone 2s were different.
Our zone 2s were different, but our coach, after the fact, screenshotted both of our rides and said, I think I put a caption on there, perfectly executed a zone 2 ride. And he's basically called me out and said, this is not a perfectly executed zone 2 ride. And then he said, multiple choice, which one of you performed this test better? And I obviously knew which one he was talking about, because this is where it got interesting to me, because it goes into heart rate.
Yeah.
So for you, when you did our ride, what heart rate were you? You were training to heart rate, not power, right?
Correct. Yeah. I didn't look at my power at all. I could care, I could have cared less about my power on this ride. I was purely looking at my heart rate.
But
now,
what was your threshold?
This might get me in trouble with you, but I might have accidentally told on you, because as soon as you drove away, Derek just randomly showed up on his bike.
Of course.
And he's like, hey, and he asked me about the ride, and I was like, man, I couldn't stay with Josh. I was like, I wasn't gonna go above 135 heart rate. I hit 140 a couple of times, but I was like, I'm not going above that. And you'd be 40 meters ahead, and the old...
I'm just looking back being like, please, Greg, please catch up. The
old Greg would have put a dig in and gotten right under wheel, because it wasn't that the pace was too fast. I couldn't keep up. It was, I'm trying to stay perfectly in my zone. And so now when I do outdoor rides, if I fall off on a group ride, instead of just revving it up to catch up, I just slowly spin my way and get back up if I catch up. So for the whole first hour, or you just kept going on ahead. I'm like, why can't I keep up with him? What the heck? And I was like, how am I drafting in a zone 2 ride? This is embarrassing.
Well, this is where I think it's interesting, and it got me thinking about our zone 2 and heart rates.
For the record, he did go on to say that I had the better zone 2 ride on paper. I just want to get that on record, that I won the competition for having the quote unquote best zone 2 ride.
Yeah. Yes, technically, Technically, you did.
But now I want to know why this
But
is
I
all...
disagree with
yeah,
it.
tell me why
I
this is all
disagree with
crap.
it.
Why is this complete
Okay,
bogus?
let me ask you this, though. For our ride, what was your max heart rate that you wanted to stay under?
I wanted to stay...
Like, you don't want to go, what, was
Yeah.
it above 135?
Like, I mean...
Or did you want to stick right within 135?
I wanted to stay... Ideally, for me, zone 2, I've been staying inside at 130, no
Okay.
higher. For outside, I'm like, there's a little bit more variability.
Sure.
You're not doing erg mode, so I'm like, okay, 135 is going to be my limit.
Yep.
But even when I look at zone 2 calculators and do the equations, it puts me at like 131 is my top of the zone 2.
Okay.
So tell me why I'm wrong.
Okay, here's my hot take on it.
Okay.
I think that if people are using Dr. Fox's scale of the max heart rate, so this is something that you type into ChatGPT or look almost anywhere on Google and you look at like max heart rate and scale, you're going to find his equation that essentially says he and this other guy coined the 220 minus your age.
Okay, that's what I was going to ask. Is this the age one where
This is the age
Okay.
one. But what he did with it, so this is back in the 70s, and what he did with this is he essentially helped establish training zones based on people's max heart rate on just that alone. So 220 minus your age, and I would make the argument that if your training is determined by his scale of max heart rate, I think you're either undertraining or potentially even overtraining. So, and here's why. Because for you, you're 1 year older than me, but what's your max heart rate? Do you know what your max heart rate is?
So when I did my lactate test, it said 188 was my max.
Okay.
The highest I've ever hit on a bike in the last couple of years, I think, is 183, 184.
Okay.
So I've never been able to hit.
Yeah,
And
you've
what's-
truly never gone to like the absolute
I've never
188.
felt like I'm going to die, no.
Right.
But my heart rate, in general, I feel like it kind of ticks low. That was one thing that kept coming up in my lactate test was, I bet right now, if you and I raced up the Alp in Zwift, so
Okay.
let's say it's 50 minutes. Let's say it takes us 50 minutes.
Yeah.
Which I think, but I've done that before. You could do that. So that's just right about all out effort. I bet you that my heart rate would probably be at least 10 beats lower on average than yours.
Yeah.
And mine just runs low. And I used to always think that means I'm not fast or I can't keep up. And when we did the lactate test, he was like, no, that just means your heart rate runs low. It's not,
Yeah.
doesn't mean it's not the end of the world.
Doesn't mean good nor bad.
Right. And
Yeah.
I always took it as bad because my friends are hitting 175 average. I'm like, man, I'm only 163, 164 up this thing.
Yeah, that's interesting.
My threshold heart rate is only 155.
Yeah. That's, yeah.
Yours is significantly high. Didn't you hold something crazy in your marathon or something?
Yeah, so I did a marathon this fall, and my average heart rate was 172 beats per minute.
For how long?
3 hours and 23 minutes.
See, when I hit 172, I'm in the red going up a hill.
Yeah.
172 is when you're out of the saddle climbing and your upper body starts hurting. And you're I'm not even using my, you know what I'm talking about?
Yes.
When you're really going for it,
yeah.
172 is everything is starting to hurt. So
Oh, yeah. But so, and this is where I thought this was interesting, because when we looked at our zone 2 rides, and this is where, based on this popularized formula, right? So we'll throw it up on the screen, and I'm not going to go on each one of these. Everybody can look it up and see. But essentially, here's the premise of it, right? So he developed this a formula to where it's based on your max heart rate, and essentially what you do is it really helps determine your intensities at zone 1 through 5. So for example, for zone 2, for the aerobic zone, he would say that it's 60 to 70% of your max heart rate. So both of us, I have a max heart rate of 188. I typically use a different formula, though very similar to it, but slightly better. My max heart rate is 188, but for me, that would put me at 131 131 beats per minute on my top end zone 2. And I will tell you this, that is absolutely not my top end zone 2.
Because you were holding like way higher, not way higher, but you were, I think I remember like asking like, what are you?
Yeah, so I was
What are you at right now? And you're like, I'm
like
145. I'm like, I don't think you're zone 2. You're like, yes, I am.
I have tried to historically stay under about 145 beats per minute for a zone 2 because I have tested this over the last year. Typically, it's running true for me. So I would say more realistically, my top end of zone 2 from a heart rate standpoint is probably about 140. I typically do 145 because I don't, especially outdoors, right?
You
There's
allow a little bit of
like
flexibility, what I was saying with
right?
the 5 beats up. Okay.
And I typically know if I'm in that 140, mid 140s or even higher, I'm typically tempoing, and I know that I'm working. I can feel that more. But anything for me that's like 120, like 120s to 130s feels still very low zone 2 heart rate for me. And that's just been my experience where I'm like, I'm not working that hard.
Yeah.
This is a very easy low end zone 2 versus 140 where I know that, yeah, this is probably a top end zone 2 for me. And I think what I take issue with is this guy's scale is essentially it's oversimplified. Okay. And it doesn't account for 3 things. So when I was looking at this, I was like, I think this is BS, right? It's not BS, but it is a little bit to where it's like, this is not true for me.
My favorite part was in our text with Derek, he started like kind of just joke, like digging at you.
Yeah.
And I was just sitting back like, oh, this is like when he yelled at me for using erg mode. And I was like, it's so nice to be on the other end of this where I'm just watching you just be like, no, I'm freaking 145 and that's just where I'm at. Yeah. And I'm like, oh, this is great.
Right. So here's the 3 things that I think Dr. Fox is leaving out of his scale. And his scale has been debated. And so the common theme ever since he's put this scale out is that it's not fully accurate, right? It's a great benchmark.
So he himself has acknowledged that.
I don't know if he has. No, I think everybody else. Okay, so a lot of other people have commented and saying.
So it came out in the 70s. So in the 50 years that it's been out, people have
taken this with a grain of salt and said, this is a good guide.
Okay, a starting benchmark or something.
Starting benchmark. Okay. But here's the 3 things that I think that he's not accounting for. 1 is genetics.
Yeah, that's the difference between us.
Right. So it plays a significant role in determining anybody's individual max heart rate, right? So 2 people the same age can have vastly different max heart rates. That's the first thing. The second thing is individual variability. So even going beyond genetics, think about just an individual's lifestyle, think about their training history, and their current fitness levels can all contribute factors to your maximum heart rate. So
is this where like heat training and like how people say in the winter when you're outside and you're bundled up, your heart rate's automatically going to be higher because it's working to cool itself down? Like that is that kind of what you're getting at here?
Well, I think if you think about it in terms of someone who has been consistently training for years will probably have a different max heart rate than somebody of the same age who is just starting out.
Okay.
And I think in terms of that individual variability, I think so much of that plays into the current fitness level, right? So even on Garmin where it shows you like, hey, you have an age of whatever, 5-6 years younger, and it always makes you feel great, but that can play into it. And so I think the third thing is that the key thing that's leaving out is just people's anaerobic capacity and their lactate threshold. And so you and I have known this from a lactate perspective where you have different people that have a higher anaerobic capacity, right? So that the ability to go at high intensity and stay at high intensity can vary significantly from person to person. So even take, for example, like sprinters tend to have a very high aerobic capacity because they can stay at a very...
Wait, aerobic or anaerobic?
I mean anaerobic, not aerobic. So anaerobic capacity where somebody can sustain a higher heart rate for longer periods without accumulating as much lactate. And I think that's where these trainings, so taking the max heart rate, should be tailored to the specific thresholds of that individual. So take, for example, the genetics, take in their individual variability, take, for example, their training history, their experience, even the rate of perceived effort too, where for you would say, yeah, 131, I know that's probably my top end zone 2 heart rate. I would say, no, mine is certainly right around that, like 140.
But that makes sense that
Yeah.
mine just runs lower. Like,
Right.
I can't hold 172 for 3 hours.
Yeah. So this is where, when we looked back on those pictures, I was thinking that I'd performed that ride perfectly, and Derek would say, wait, no, but he's looking at these scales based on these percentages.
The Strava scales.
Yep, the
Yeah.
Strava, and then, even with Garmin has its own version, Training Peaks as well.
They all have something.
Yeah, and you can customize yours in Strava, so you can actually go into Strava and customize your heart rate ranges, but it's interesting to think that most people never do. And most people would fall within this general scale, and they might be either undertraining or overtraining because, as you know, take, for example, that's almost a 10 beats per minute difference.
Yeah.
If I was told, hey, your top end zone 2 for heart rate is 131, and I was always only ever going to that 131, I might be training at a really low, like not a really low, but I would be training in a lower end zone 2 than what would actually be possible for me. Therefore, my other zones might be affected because of that, and therefore I might be under training.
So what's the third then? So you said genetics is one.
Individual variability and then
Variability.
anaerobic capacity and lactate threshold.
Okay. And
So
that's
where
a 2-in-1 deal?
Yeah, that's a
Okay.
2-in-1. Basically, anybody with the ability to hold a higher anaerobic capacity, and that could change from person to person.
So do
right?
you think then that you are one who can hold a higher anaerobic capacity?
Yes, but
Because I mean,
I've only really tested this probably in the run at this point, and not necessarily on the bike.
Well, no, your 2x8 test 2 weeks ago, you were
True.
hitting like what,
Yeah.
350, Did you hit 390?
Well, for
at that
the last minute, I was just pushing as hard as I could.
Right,
so
but
sprinting.
that goes to that. That's the point
True.
that I'm making is
Yeah.
you're in an anaerobic after a very exhaustive
Yes.
lead up into that,
Yeah.
where you've kind of depleted the tank, and then you're like, nope, I still have some anaerobic
Yeah.
capacity here.
Well, what I think is interesting is that I don't think I've ever, and I haven't trained forever, but it's like even in the last couple of years, I would have told you, oh, I probably don't have a high anaerobic capacity. Those are for guys that are great.
Giant legs, sprinters.
Sprinters, or even guys that have been training forever. And what I've realized is maybe I do have a little bit, because just even compared to you and I, and now that can play out very differently in a race, and you would have some advantages I wouldn't have, and vice versa. But I think it all just depends on like understanding that, am I actually training in the right zones?
Yeah.
And if we're set out for a zone 2 ride, understanding, hey, am I actually in my zone 2 or am I training under or over this? Because if I'm training at 150 or 155 heart rate, I know I'm not zone 2. I know even from that, just the feel of it, right? So even without a heart rate monitor, I can understand what my body's doing, and I'm like, I am working too hard for a zone 2 in this.
It's funny, like that's with my training. It's been interesting. I was telling you this. I can't feel heart rate what zone 2 feels like yet. Meaning I can't feel the breathing yet, but I can feel like the bike, how zone 2 feels. So here's what
do you mean?
So when I was a runner, I got so familiar with my mile pace, like for workouts.
Yeah.
If my coach said, hey, go out and run 5 miles at a 7 to 7:15 mile pace, I could do that almost without a watch. I just knew what that pace felt like. And when we were doing zone 2, because I went out the next day by myself for 2 hours, and I like perfectly, like it said like 95% was like, I never went above like 135. I could just
Did you
feel.
text that to Derek too and just be like, hey, just...
No, I didn't.
I did this again.
I took the higher road.
Oops,
but,
I did it again.
Yeah. But like I can feel like this is the right gear.
Yeah.
This is,
So it's more about the gears for you in terms of the feel
the
right
gear,
now.
the cadence, the resistance, like I can just feel like, okay, this feels like zone 2, and because my breathing feels fine. It's just like I can just tell. Like I don't know if it's like wattage because I'm not really paying attention to my watt in this zone.
Okay.
Which I think kind of segues us a little bit to a follow up with this.
Yeah.
It's like.
So let me ask you this.
Yeah.
In terms of training, because we have a lot of people out there that are like us, right? So recreational riders and those that now are transitioning to racing or those that have raced historically, power meters haven't been around forever.
No. Nor have they been accessible.
Right.
The ones that have been around.
Especially with some of these price points.
Yes.
But that has really changed.
Yeah.
And now power meters have become a lot more accessible and a lot less expensive. Thus, more people have them. But it goes back to the idea of, in terms of your training, if you know, for a recreational rider, let me ask you this. For a recreational rider that's not racing, doesn't necessarily care about racing, just enjoys it, loves group rides, would you say that they should even get a power meter?
No. For a rec rider, I don't think it's necessary. I think if you're looking to take a segment or just go on a group ride, I think a heart rate monitor is fine. I mean, there's people that's going to listen to this and be like, you don't even need a heart rate monitor. Just go ride your freaking bike and enjoy it, which is fine. Because recreational riding is
enjoyable.
It's do whatever. But I would argue that to go to the racing, but more specifically the training.
Yes.
I would say a heart rate and power meter are a necessity. Like heart rate. So for me, I use my heart rate at zone 1 and zone 2. When I train intervals zone 3 through 5, I use my power meter. And I think that power meters have become so much more, they're still expensive.
Yes.
But if you have like the SRAM rival group set, you can get it with a power meter. The whole group set's like under $1,000 with a power meter. At least it was when it dropped. We have the pedals, which I'm a huge fan of because
they're so nice.
Because you can put them on whatever bike you're on.
Yes.
But even when I go outside and do workouts, the power meter has been a quintessential piece of the training.
Yeah. So let me understand this. You have typically used zone 1 and zone 2, and you would measure that mostly just on heart rate. And then zone 3, 4, and 5, or I should say zone 3 through, technically there's 7 in terms of the power side of things. So there's 5 zones for heart rate, there's 7 for power. You typically, anything tempo plus for power, you're typically riding to, like you're focused on your power meter more than anything else.
When you use the word typically, that has to be a little loosely based. So what I mean by typically is, since we've been on this training plan, this has kind of been what Derek has prescribed and what he's advised, and I've noticed a lot of success with it. When I used to just hop on Zwift for a recovery ride and not be disciplined with keeping my heart rate down or my power numbers down, I would just be riding around at whatever. Because your power is jumping everywhere, I try to keep for the lower zone rides, because heart rate typically ticks up a lot slower. That's my benchmark gauge for if I'm staying in the right zone. And then, because you hit a stoplight, you come out, you push more power, it's going to shoot up. And it's like, if you're trying to perfectly stay under 200 watts, that's not going to happen.
It's hard
with cars and traffic and things like that.
Yep.
So heart rate's much easier to gauge, but now when I'm doing specific intervals, you absolutely need that power.
Yeah. So you would make the argument that recreational riders, you're going out there just enjoying it. You don't even need power meter or a heart rate monitor. But if you wanted to do one or the other, I would even say just buy a heart rate monitor, because A, they're cheaper.
They're so cheap.
B, you really don't need power if you're just trying to measure your physiological response to what your body is doing, then all you need is a heart rate monitor.
And unless you're a crazy numbers guy that just loves numbers, but
it's not necessary. But I agree with you. Like if you're training and if you're getting into racing, or if you are racing, I would argue you do need a power meter. And especially because you're training anything tempo plus, when we're doing, zone 4, zone 5 stuff, or we're doing threshold, VO2 max, sweet spot, those type of things, you're it's so important when you're doing these type of interval work to really hold a specific power, because it gives you that ability to know this is what I can actually hold and this is what I'm training to. Versus if you were just doing that off a heart rate, your heart rate might not, if your heart rate might not be able to get up to that proper zone 4 or 5 of what your body's responding to, even a minute into the interval. But that would throw off your power significantly if you were only training to your heart rate in that measure. And so for me, I should say, went for zone 3 plus, it's always been go off of your power. And it would be the same when I was running too. When I would do sprints, I would do pickups, whatever they were, I would do specific intervals. I'm always going off of my pace, and I wouldn't go off a heart rate. Because at the end of the day, if I'm going into a race, I care the most about my pace,
sure.
right? I'm going to be looking at my heart rate a little bit, but mostly I'm going to be just trying to hold pace. And I would say for riding, I don't know. I don't think we're going to be even looking so much about power. You probably will, because you'll be doing longer endurance events versus maybe crit style. I might not even look down.
Yeah, no.
I would be scared to look down because I'm so focused on what's the wheel in front of me. I'm so focused on cornering, getting that, making sure there's no gap, all those things. So to me, power and heart rate won't necessarily matter in the race itself. But for training, I think it absolutely does.
For the race I'm doing at Cherry, where it's a 1.5 to 2 hour climb, I know I will have to stay within a certain wattage.
Yes.
Because I don't want to get too excited being in a race and blow up too early on. So I know I'll have to kind of tone down for the first hour and then try to basically take the same approach that you took with your 2x8 test, kind of come in a little conservative and just be like, okay, I'm sure Derek will give me a number as I get closer to that race, and he typically does that. Hey, don't go above this. Like, keep it right here. If you feel good after an hour, go up 5 watts on your average or your normalized for that matter.
But see, the problem is if you weren't using a power meter and if you went solely based off of a heart rate monitor into this race for Cherry this year, you would say, I want to try and keep it within 160, 165. I would say you might have a really tough time doing that simply based on the fact of your heart rate variability. So things like, and it could change every single day. So factors like the weather, what you ate, how you slept, your training load, your stress, the temperature outside.
It gets colder as you go up at Cherry.
Yeah.
Like it drops like 20 degrees by the time you get to the top.
Right. And so you need to hold power.
Yeah.
And you're looking at power. Heart rate is not as important in that. Now, if you're going in the red, if you're redlining, that's important, but you shouldn't be. If you know you're holding the correct power, you shouldn't be redlining. And I think just at the end of the day, for me, the problem I have with Dr. Fox's heart rate scale isn't necessarily the concept. It's more of the individualization of this scale and how it's portrayed into the masses. So for those like me and you to say, this is a good guide, but there is a difference. I would say mine zones are not true zones based on this scale.
So in summary, your issue isn't necessarily with his equation. Your issue is with the idea of one size fits all.
Correct.
Okay.
Yes. That's a good summary. Yes.
Because you kind of operate outside of that. You don't fit into that mold.
Correct.
That the equation is based off of.
But I would argue a lot of people don't.
Sure.
Some people it might fit perfectly, but perhaps there's a lot of people that would say the same thing and be like, yeah, I don't think this is quite accurate for me. I think I'm either a couple beats lower, I'm a couple beats higher in some of these scales. I think the most important thing you can do, if you can, great, do a lactate test. Now, if you can't, that's okay too. There's other things you could do, like a field test where you can truly go and try and measure your own maximum heart rate. And there's a variety of things you can do. There was one group that I was looking at online. It was Pad Yak Racing, where they basically said that you go out 15 minutes, do a warm-up. This is outdoor riding. So you go outdoors, if you're trying to measure max heart rate, like as a field test, 15 minutes warm-up, and then do a 10-minute all-out time trial. That sounds horrible.
Yeah.
In the last 1 minute of that, go as hard as you can, and then even the last 30 seconds of that 1 minute, sprint.
It just keeps getting worse sounding.
Yeah.
Nothing
and
about what you're
that,
saying sounds.
From that should give you, of your highest numbers, that should give you a pretty close approximation of what your max heart rate is. So there's things that you can do even outside of that. So I like to just use the formula of, and I forget which one it is, if it's Hunt or whatever it is, but it's essentially 211 minus parentheses 0.64 times your age. And that's where I got my max heart rate. So I think that's a pretty good.
I think it's a good take.
That's a good take.
I think that's a good take, and
I like it. I don't know. I would be curious to hear from you guys. What do you think of this? Do you think I'm full of hot air, or would you agree with me that there is a lot of variability that plays into it? There's genetics. There's even just your racing history, your experience, knowing that your zones are slightly different than what is perceived from this scale. So let us know.
All right. Next, we're going to move on to something new we're going to try. So we're moving on to a segment called Cycling Trends of the Week.
Let's go.
Where we're basically, in this portion of the show, we'll break down trending things that happened this week in the world of cycling.
Okay.
So the first one, a video was released this week on Instagram. It was a reel of Tadej Pogacar riding on the cobbles of the Paris-Roubaix. Have you seen this?
I actually haven't.
It's awesome. So it's basically Tadej on the cobble. Have you ever seen?
How long is it? Is it a short video?
It's short, but
okay.
He looks like he's just flying. Have you ever seen the cobbles? Like, yeah, they look like
gnarly.
You need a freaking fat tire mountain bike to ride them, and he is zipping along on this thing.
I wonder how Vanderpool feels about seeing this video.
Well, I also saw a video today because I'm getting a lot of the feed, and I saw that his footage of a year or two ago when he won Roubaix.
Yeah,
and he's zipping along. But it is interesting. A couple things stuck out. A lot of Tadej, he's been pictured on his new bike recently.
Yes,
and this video he's not. He's on the V4 RS. So that's like the bike. That's like the climbing bike he's been on. So I'm kind of curious about that.
Maybe just slightly more comfortable over the cobbles versus road with his new bike.
Maybe. I think pros have got to look at it and just be like, oh, crap. like this guy that wins everything. Now he's training on this. And
if I was a pro and if I was at that level and I'm seeing videos of Tadej, I think I would have to block him when in racing season. I would have to block it because I would get so intimidated by something like that. Knowing what he did last year, I would be extremely intimidated.
He's just so what I love about this video is it just goes to show his overall versatility.
Yeah,
he can win GC, he can win the Grand Tours, he can win the classics, he can win the world champion. He just can win everything. And so he has said he wants to win Roubaix.
Yeah. And
hats off to him. I hope he does. Because it was go find the video. It's pretty he's humming on these things.
Yeah. I'm excited to watch it. Anything he does, it is truly remarkable and also very intimidating. I'm sure if you're other pros looking at this being like, ooh, okay. Might be a little different than I expected.
Second trend of the week, it was announced that Zwift and Trainer Road are teaming up. So
I didn't know this until you told me. That's wild.
I got an email and I started instantly reading about it. So a new feature for this integration is that Zwift has enabled specific power targets for workouts pulled from Trainer Road. So you can stick directly to your training zone plan, no more 5-watt rounding. So every time you get on Zwift and you look at your, let's say, training peaks, and Derek's got you at, like today he had me at 213 watts for like a tempo ride. It automatically rounds up to 215. So there's a rounding factor.
Yeah, I've noticed that.
So here's my take on this. I think all of these other training platforms, they are all trying to compete for space where Zwift has the numbers. Like I would say a majority of people use Zwift. Trainer Road has the AI FTP predictor performance. It's basically AI coaching. So it's very different from what we're doing where we have Derek who is our coach and walks through everything with us. Trainer Road is all AI based.
Sure.
But the from what I've heard from people who use TrainerRoad, it's so boring. It's just erg mode with charts. So this is now allowing the TrainerRoad workouts to go into Zwift and ride in Zwift, and then do a how you feel at the end to base your future workouts. I think it could be a game changer.
Yeah, I mean, it makes sense.
You don't have to choose between one or the other anymore.
Yeah, I like that. And I'm sure it makes a lot of sense for TrainerRoad too, to be able to be aligned with the bigger brand, right?
Yeah. Finally, this week, a video went out this week. Roads CC did this, showing or comparing a 10-year-old Tarmac SL4, saying it is faster than a current Factor Austro VAM.
Oh, I saw this.
They tested it, and it turns out that the Tarmac SL4 was 1 second faster. But when you watch the video, it's a little clickbaity, only because the biggest takeaway from it is the Tarmac had such a narrower headset.
Oh, okay.
Where the Factor had a very wider handlebar to put you in a much less aerodynamic position, just creating more drag. So,
what was your takeaway from the video? Did you watch all of it?
I did.
Okay.
I think that if they had the same headset or same spacing at the handlebars, I think it would be very different.
Okay.
So, but the other takeaway is, and I'm a sucker for this myself, there's so much marketing that you have to have the newest, fastest bike when a bike from 10 years ago can still keep up with a current bike.
Yeah.
And instead of buying a whole new bike, you could just make some upgrades to go narrower headset or more aggressive riding position to get some speed versus paying top dollar for a whole new bike.
Well, it goes back to what Coach Derek talks about so much, is that your position on the bike will help you become much more aero than so many other upgrades will. Simply in that, if you want to get more aero, focus on your position more than anything else. All these bikes out there today are all great. Yep. And even back to the SL4, still arguably a very fast bike.
Yeah.
But your position is going to be the most important thing that you can change, that will help set you apart from, if you're riding the same bike as somebody, both of you have SL4s, you both do the same exact race, the person who's more aero is going to be, the
advantage.
They're going to have the advantage just because they're going to be working less hard than the other person.
It was still an interesting video. I think that it made me think of our audience, where to go from recreational rider to racer, that doesn't mean you need to drop top dollar.
Yeah, 100%.
On a bicycle.
Yeah. Focus on your position. Become more aero as your body.
Spend the money on a fit.
Yeah.
And some wheels.
And also video yourself too.
Yeah.
Put your phone 10 feet from you, video yourself whenever you're doing your trainer ride or whatever, and look how you are positioned, trying to get into an aero position, and look how you are. That's a great way to test.
Yep.
So
absolutely.
Yeah.
All right, you're up now.
Yes, rapid fire. So we're also introducing a new segment where I think this will be interesting to see how rapid this is with Greg, if he can stay within the idea of a rapid fire. But this is going to be rapid fire, and I'm going to kick it off. First question to you. So, do you listen to music when riding outside?
Yes, but I have to kick it to you. Are you implying with something in your ear?
Yes.
Like,
are you using like a beatbox? Are you using like a speaker? Are you holding this when you're riding outside?
Do you ride
what
with
are you talking
AirPods
about?
in your ear, like earbuds in your ear?
Yes.
See, that's stupid to me. Like, that's the dumbest thing. Use like Jess got me last year for Christmas, the
ones that don't go fully in your ears?
Yes, the bone conduction. Those are great because I can hear.
Those?
Yes.
Oh.
They're amazing because I can hear cars.
Yeah.
So when I'm out by myself on a Zone 2 ride, I'll take those and I'll listen to a podcast or music within reason so I can hear traffic. I don't blare music in my ears. I can't, like, I'm upset that you ride with stuff in your ear.
You've told me this, and I don't disagree with you from a safety aspect. However,
I'm super curious what this however is going to be, because
I ride earlier than most people anyways. I don't see any human for the most part on most of my rides, because I'm riding so freaking early in the morning that I'm never worried about traffic. I would say it's very different if I rode in the afternoons, it's a very different story. Yeah, and I would feel unsafe riding with headphones, especially around traffic. There's no way.
Are you mostly on the trail then in the mornings?
A lot of times.
Okay. So
yeah, getting streets to the trail or some sort of version of it, but there's not that many cars.
Yeah.
5 in the morning on a Saturday, most people aren't zipping around to the grocery store, waking up, hauling kids places.
So if you're, what do you listen to then? What do you train to?
So I switch it up quite a bit. I think because I'm also on the trainer a lot, and since we're training every single day, I tend to have my go-tos where in terms of favorite music, I would say I always fall back to like more pop, rock, kind of that nostalgic.
Okay.
So stuff that I grew up listening to. But I've also used the Spotify DJ a lot.
Oh.
And I don't know if you've tried it, the Spotify DJ.
Is that like you just pick a song and it just...
No, there's an AI version of Spotify now where it's like an AI DJ.
Okay.
So initially it was like, this came out like a year ago, maybe it was even longer than that. And it was really cool. And it should mix in new songs that would be based on your taste that you might just never listen to. The problem is that it ends up playing most of the stuff that you already know. So, but I do that. What do you listen? What's your favorite music to listen to during a workout?
So if I'm going hard, let's say up the Alp or some hard intervals, it's the Rocky soundtrack.
That's so cheesy.
No, it's not. I'm all about it.
Every time you're any hard interval, you're listening to Rocky.
Or 80s rock. So
I love that, though.
I love an 80s rock. Because then you'll get some Rocky, and then you'll get like the Karate Kid. You're the best. Like, I love that one. Rocky is hard though, because there's so many like crappy songs that I gotta skip it. So I'm hitting like next song.
Okay, I want to land here just for a minute because I just think this is fascinating. So tell me about the Rocky soundtrack that resonates so well with you during a hard workout.
How can you not? Have you seen Rocky?
Yeah.
Then when he goes and
it's okay.
Like when he's doing like the crazy training, that's the song I want. How can you not, like when it's like dun 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 dun, 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 and I'm just like, oh, here we go, and I'm climbing. Like, by the way, Jess makes fun of me for this too, because like,
this is most hard workouts for you though. You're just get me to this Rocky soundtrack.
Yes, like, and there's even times where like, if the song plays and I'm about to start the interval, I'll go back and listen to it again. Like, so it's coming in at the good part right as the interval kicks off. Yeah,
that's even worse.
I have like a repeat mode just where I can just listen to the same thing over and over.
Wow.
So
okay.
Yeah.
Top 5 favorite movie of yours?
For sure, Rocky's in there.
Okay, it's great. No, I think that's great, Greg. I'm happy for you. Okay, rapid fire. What's motivating you now the most when training?
Trying to figure out zone 2 and be disciplined. I've been enjoying that.
Zone 2 and discipline. Okay.
So just not going out of my exertion zones. I've been like trying that out. What about you?
I've been enjoying VO2 max the most in terms of the sessions. I think simply because it just brings you to that higher intensity and it just makes it more interesting. I'm more mentally engaged in the actual workout, especially because it's still winter and we're doing so much on the trainer that just mentally I look forward to hit intervals or higher intensity, things like a VO2 max session, to where I'm just mentally more engaged in the actual workout itself.
I do feel like when I do a VO2, I walk away feeling like I just got better.
Yes.
I can't explain it versus like a tempo ride or even like a 30 for 30s. I'm like, that was okay. But the VO2, I'm like, I feel like
and you feel it in your legs.
Yeah, I feel it in my legs that day. All right, I like this. Keep them coming.
All right. How do you keep your feet warm when outside in the cold?
I don't.
Okay. Yeah, I know this. But
yeah, so I'm glad you put this in because I'm going on a quest this week. And everything. I cannot keep my feet warm. So I've found some stuff online. I'm gonna try some stuff.
Okay.
And then I'm gonna shoot a video and put it on the channel.
I love it.
Because I have shoe covers, and after an hour, my feet are freezing. I cannot keep my feet warm, and I want to do it within a budget. Because the obvious answer is you could buy $500 cycling boots that are like snow boots with cleats on them, and I'm for the little bit of riding that I do outside, that's not worth it.
Sure.
But
okay.
So short answer, I don't keep my feet warm, and it pisses me off.
Yeah.
What about you?
I don't think I have a foot issue.
Okay.
But I would say that during winter, I'm always shoe covers, and I think sometimes my hands might run more cold than my feet.
So like the ride that we did.
Yeah, my feet weren't cold.
Your feet weren't cold.
No.
We got to the coffee shop an hour in, and I was like, my feet are freezing.
Yeah. No, I was fine. Yeah.
I envy that. It's my feet. Like my feet are the thing that make it miserable. It's my freaking toes.
Which makes sense, and it would make you want to ride less outside in the cold.
Yes.
So yeah, I get that. Well, I'm excited to see your hack. I'm curious what you'll do.
I'm excited to try it.
What's the hardest thing right now training with young kids? This is the last one.
Waking up early. It's been good. It's been good to go home and not work out, because that is hard to get off of work and then be in the basement and you can hear them running around upstairs or arguing with each other or just doing kid stuff.
Yeah.
And or just having that time away. But it is nice to get it done in the morning.
Yeah.
I'm trying to figure out ways to more incorporate my family into like training. Like, hey, I'm going to ride to this coffee shop. Let's meet there or something. I haven't mastered that yet because my kids, that's not kind of in their wheelhouse yet, but I think it will be in the next couple of years.
Yeah, that makes sense.
You?
Sleep.
Okay.
Especially with
you've got the little one.
She's almost 9 months now, but we had a tease the other day where she slept 3 nights all through the night, and both my wife and I were like, this is it. We're finally in it. We've arrived. And then all of a sudden, the next 2 nights, she woke up 3 different times during the night. And it was such a tease to have that of, hey, we're almost getting a full night's of sleep again. And then all of a sudden, it's like, nope, it's still hit or miss every night. So it's challenging, but it's not impossible. You know, it just makes some nights more frustrating when you wake up and you're still more tired than you should be going into a session. But
for sure.
Yeah. Okay, so we want to hear from you guys. We would love to hear your experience with, do you use heart rate monitor for training? Do you use power meters? Which one do you prefer? Do you prefer both? Or do you not use any? Do you think, hey, you know what? I don't care about either one of these things. We'd love to hear from you guys in terms of the rapid fire, things that you thought were interesting, and also next week, which would be really exciting.
Yeah, we
have a special guest coming on.
We do.
Tim from Top View Sports. We're going to be doing a race out in Georgia, and so we're going to be interviewing him, and he is the race director. He's got a great story, but would love to hear from you guys in the element of just questions for a race director. You know, I think it'd be interesting to hear any questions that you guys have in terms of, you know, things that you would want to know that you maybe would never get the opportunity to ask a race director. So let us know what you think, and we will catch you guys next week.
See ya.